The trap springs. The distress signal came through the quantum relay at 3:47 hours, ship time. Captain Sarah Chen was reviewing patrol reports in her quarters aboard the UES Defiance when the emergency klaxon pierced the silence of deep space. She was on the bridge within 90 seconds, her coffee still steaming in the mug she'd abandoned. "Report," she commanded, settling into her captain's chair. Commander Alex Rivera, her tactical officer, looked up from his console with grim eyes. "Distress signal from Kepler 442 bits, Captain. The colony there is under attack. They're screaming for immediate assistance." Sarah frowned. Kepler 442 bits was one of humanity's newer settlements, barely 5,000 colonists strong. It was also dangerously close to the border with Zephyrian space. The Zephyrians had been quiet for months, but their silence had felt more ominous than peaceful. "How many ships can we gather?" Sarah asked. "The Meridian and Stalwart are within 6 hours of our position. The carrier Yorktown is 12 hours out," Rivera replied. "Admiral Webb is coordinating from Earth Defense Command." Sarah nodded. 4 ships weren't much, but they were what humanity had in this sector. The human fleet was spread thin across dozens of systems, protecting colonies that seemed to grow more vulnerable with each passing day. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's chief science officer, approached the captain's chair. "Sarah, I've been analyzing the signal. Something doesn't feel right about this." "Explain." "The transmission pattern is clean. Too clean. When colonies are under attack, their communications usually show interference, damage to their relay systems. This signal is pristine, like it was broadcast from a laboratory." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Elena's instincts had saved the Defiance more than once. "Are you suggesting this is a trap?" "I'm suggesting we proceed with extreme caution." But even as Elena spoke, another signal arrived. This one was definitely genuine. The voice was broken, desperate, filled with static and the sound of explosions in the background. "This is Director Hamilton on Kepler 442 bits. They came out of nowhere. Zephyrian dreadnoughts, dozens of them. The orbital defense platforms are gone. They're landing troops. For the love of God, someone help us." The transmission cut to static. Sarah's jaw tightened. Real or not, there were human lives at stake. "Set course for Kepler 442 bits, maximum burn. Send word to the fleet. We go in together." The journey to Kepler 442 bits took 18 hours. During that time, the small human fleet grew to include 7 ships total. Not much against an enemy that could field hundreds, but it was what they had. Admiral Marcus Webb's face appeared on the main screen as they approached the system. Webb was old military, scared by 3 previous conflicts with various alien species. His gray hair was cropped short, and his steel blue eyes missed nothing. "Captain Chen, I'm not comfortable with this. Our intelligence suggests the Zephyrians have been moving ships into this sector for weeks." "Sir, we can't abandon a human colony based on suspicions," Sarah replied. "Even if it is a trap, we have to try." Webb's expression softened slightly. He understood. Every human commander faced the same impossible choice: protect the colonies, even when it meant risking everything. "Understood, Captain. But we go in smart. The Yorktown stays back, launches fighters for reconnaissance. If this goes bad, someone needs to survive to warn Earth." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What they found there made Sarah's blood run cold. The system was full of ships, not dozens, but hundreds. Zephyrian vessels of every class filled the space around the colony world like a metallic storm. Massive dreadnoughts bristled with weapons, while smaller cruisers and destroyers formed hunting packs between them. "My God," Rivera whispered from his station. "It's the entire Zephyrian Third Fleet." On the planet's surface, cities burned. The colony's orbital defense platforms were twisted wreckage, and evacuation ships floated dead in space. Whatever had happened here, It was already over. "Captain," Elena called from her station, "I'm reading life signs on the surface. Thousands of them. The colonists are still alive." A new voice filled the bridge, transmitted on all frequencies. It spoke in heavily accented English, the voice of Zephyrian War Commander Krelthak. "Human vessels, you are trespassing in Zephyrian space. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be swift." Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. This isn't Zephyrian space. The border is 2 light years from here. "Not anymore," Krelthak replied, and Sarah could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "The Zephyrian Empire has expanded. All human colonies in this sector now belong to us. The inhabitants will serve as labor, those who survive the selection process." The trap was sprung. The Zephyrians had been planning this for months, maybe years. Fake distress signals to lure human fleets into ambush. Coordinated strikes on isolated colonies. This wasn't a border skirmish, it was the opening move of a war of extermination. "All human vessels," Admiral Webb's voice crackled across the fleet channel, "implement Emergency Protocol 7. We are not engaging. Repeat, we are not engaging. All ships, execute emergency jump." But the Zephyrians had thought of that too. As the human ships began to charge their hyperspace drives, massive gravity wells activated throughout the system. The humans were trapped, pinned in normal space with nowhere to run. "Jump drives are offline," Rivera reported, his voice tight with controlled panic. "They've got us locked in." The Zephyrian fleet began to move, hundreds of ships converging on 7 human vessels, like wolves surrounding a wounded elk. The math was simple and brutal. "All ships, defensive formation Omega," Webb commanded. "We make them pay for every shot." What followed was less a battle than a massacre. The human ships fought with desperate courage, their weapons blazing against impossible odds. The Defiance's railguns punched holes through Zephyrian cruiser hulls, while missile salvos from the Meridian turned enemy destroyers into expanding clouds of debris. But for every Zephyrian ship destroyed, 5 more took its place. The human fleet was being systematically torn apart. The stalwart died first, her reactor going critical under concentrated fire from a Zephyrian battle group. Captain Morrison's last transmission was a defiant battle cry that echoed across the fleet channels even as his ship became a brief new star. The Meridian lasted longer, her captain performing impossible maneuvers that bought precious minutes for the other human ships. But eventually, overwhelming firepower found its mark. Sarah watched her friend Captain Torres die with his ship, refusing to surrender even as enemy boarding parties breached his hull. One by one, the human ships fell. Soon, only the Defiance and 2 others remained, battered and barely functional, surrounded by the might of the Zephyrian fleet. "Captain," Rivera called out, "the Yorktown is making a run for the system edge. She might make it." Sarah nodded grimly. At least someone would survive to carry word back to Earth. Admiral Webb had positioned his carrier at maximum range, and her fighter screen was buying precious seconds against the pursuing Zephyrian squadrons. "This is Admiral Webb to all surviving ships," came the transmission, weak and filled with static. "I'm transmitting all tactical data to Earth Command. Tell them the Zephyrians aren't just expanding. They're hunting us. This was planned, coordinated. They mean to wipe us out completely." The Yorktown's transmission cut off as she made the jump to hyperspace, 3 Zephyrian pursuit ships following her into the unknown. Whether she would make it to Earth was anyone's guess. Krelthak's voice filled the bridge again. "Remaining human vessels, your fleet is destroyed. Surrender now, and we will grant you the honor of serving the Empire before your execution." Sarah looked around her bridge. Her crew stared back at her, bloody but unbroken. Rivera's tactical station was sparking from battle damage. Elena's science console showed critical system failures across the ship, but in their eyes, she saw something the Zephyrians had not expected. "Defiance." "Commander Rivera," Sarah said quietly, "do we have any ordnance left?" "2 nuclear torpedoes, Captain." Guidance systems are damaged, but they'll fly straight. Sarah smiled grimly. Set them for proximity detonation. Full spread at the nearest dreadnought. Captain, Elena said softly, the radiation pulse will knock out our life support. We'll have maybe 20 minutes of air. Then we'd better make them count. Sarah opened a channel to the surviving human ships. All vessels, this is Captain Chen. We're not surrendering. We're not running. We're going to show these bastards what happens when you threaten human colonies. The two remaining human ships, battered hulks barely holding together, turned toward the massive Zephyrian formation. Their last act would be one of defiance, a message sent across the stars that humanity would not go quietly into the dark. The nuclear torpedoes streaked through space, their primitive but effective warheads seeking the largest target they could find. The Zephyrian dreadnought's point defense systems destroyed one torpedo, but the second found its mark. The explosion lit up the system like a miniature sun. When the light faded, the Zephyrian flagship was gone, and War Commander Krelthak with it. Two other Zephyrian vessels had been caught in the blast, their hulls twisted and burning. But it was a Pyrrhic victory. The human ships were dying, their crews gasping in the thinning air. Sarah's vision began to blur as the Defiance's life support failed. Around her, the bridge crew slumped over their stations. As consciousness faded, Sarah heard one last transmission. It was Admiral Webb's voice, somehow still broadcasting from the wreckage of his ship. Earth Command, this is Admiral Webb. Final transmission. The Zephyrians have declared war on humanity. They're not interested in territory or resources. They want us extinct. Tell Earth, tell them to prepare. The storm is coming, and we need to be ready. The transmission ended in static, and Captain Sarah Chen closed her eyes for the last time, knowing that somewhere in the dark between stars, a message was racing home, a warning that would change everything. Humanity had been bloodied, but not broken. And soon, the galaxy would learn what happened when you tried to exterminate the human race. The war had begun. Humanity's answer. 3 months after the massacre, at Kepler 442 bits, Earth was a world transformed. The emergency session of the Global Defense Council had lasted 72 hours, and when it ended, humanity had made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. General Patricia Kane stood before the massive holographic display in the depths of the Cheyenne Mountain complex, watching as thousands of new ships took shape in orbital shipyards around Earth and her colonies. Project Crimson Fleet had been authorized with unlimited funding and resources. Every nation on Earth had contributed. Every colony had volunteered their industrial capacity. The Zephyrians had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated human adaptability. General, came a voice from behind her. Captain James Morrison approached, his new uniform bearing the insignia of the Crimson Fleet. His call sign, Ghost, had been earned in the fighter squadrons, where his unconventional tactics had made him a legend. Report, Captain, Kane said without turning from the display. The new ships are exceeding all projections. The AI integration is complete, and our pilots are adapting to the neural interface faster than expected. We're ready to begin field trials. Kane finally turned to face him. Patricia Kane was a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. She had been retired when the Kepler massacre happened, but Earth had called her back for one final campaign. How many ships? 2,000 combat vessels in the first wave, with another 5,000 in production. But General, it's not just the numbers. These ships are different. The Prometheus AI system is learning from every engagement, adapting to enemy tactics in real time. Kane nodded. The Prometheus system was humanity's answer to the Zephyrian technological advantage. Where the aliens relied on overwhelming firepower and rigid tactics, humans had created something fluid, adaptive, unpredictable. And our volunteers. Morrison's expression darkened slightly. Every pilot knows this is likely a one-way mission. We haven't had a single person back out. That was the thing about humans, Kane reflected. When pushed to the edge, they didn't break. They got angry. Reports had been coming in for weeks. Zephyrian fleets were systematically destroying human colonies throughout the Outer Rim. Millions were dead or enslaved. The alien empire was making good on its promise to exterminate humanity, one settlement at a time. But they had made a mistake in their timing. Earth had been preparing for interstellar war for decades, ever since first contact with hostile alien species. The industrial base was there, hidden and waiting. The military doctrine had been developed. All that had been missing was the will to use it. The Kepler massacre had provided that will. "Sir," Morrison continued, "there's something else. Our long-range scouts have identified the Zephyrian staging area. It's a massive fleet concentration in the Proxima Centauri system. Intelligence estimates over 3,000 ships." Kane studied the tactical display. Proxima Centauri was humanity's nearest stellar neighbor, and now it was the launching point for an alien genocide. The symbolism was not lost on her. "They're being methodical," she observed, "destroying our colonies from the outside in, preventing any coordinated defense." "Yes, sir, but they've also concentrated their forces. If we could strike at Proxima—" Kane's smile was cold. "We could cut the head off the snake." She turned to the communication console. "Get me Admiral Chen." The holographic display flickered, and the image of Admiral David Chen appeared. Sarah's brother had been promoted after the massacre, and he carried the weight of that loss in his eyes. "General Kane," he said simply. "Admiral, are your ships ready?" "The Crimson Fleet stands ready, General. 2,000 vessels crewed by volunteers who have one thing in common. They've all lost family to the Zephyrians." Kane nodded. The Crimson Fleet wasn't just a military unit. It was humanity's instrument of vengeance, forged in grief and tempered by rage. "Then it's time to show the galaxy what happens when you try to exterminate the human race. Operation Crimson Dawn is a go." The largest fleet in human history jumped to hyperspace in perfect synchronization. 2,000 ships, each one a fusion of human engineering and artificial intelligence, each one crewed by people who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The journey to Proxima Centauri took 6 hours. During that time, the Prometheus AI system networked across the entire fleet, creating a collective intelligence that was greater than the sum of its parts. Human creativity merged with artificial processing power, creating something the galaxy had never seen before. Captain Morrison led the fighter wings, his squadron of advanced interceptors dancing through hyperspace with an almost organic grace. The neural interfaces allowed pilots to think their ships through maneuvers that would have been impossible with conventional controls. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," came the fleet-wide transmission. "We drop out of hyperspace in 30 seconds. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every human colony, every human child, every human dream. Make them count." The fleet dropped into normal space at the edge of the Proxima system, and what they found there defied belief. The Zephyrian fleet was even larger than intelligence had suggested. Nearly 4,000 ships filled the space around Proxima Centauri, from massive dreadnoughts to swarms of fighter craft. But the humans had not come to match ship for ship. They had come to demonstrate the power of adaptive intelligence. Prometheus Online came the artificial voice across all fleet channels. Tactical analysis complete. Initiating fluid engagement protocol. The Crimson Fleet didn't attack in formation like a traditional navy. Instead, they flowed like water around the Zephyrian positions, each ship following its own optimal attack vector, calculated in real time by the collective eye. The effect was devastating. Where the Zephyrians expected frontal assault, they faced flanking maneuvers. Where they anticipated conventional tactics, they encountered strategies that changed moment by moment. Morrison's fighter squadron struck first, their neural-linked pilots moving in perfect coordination. They didn't dogfight in the traditional sense. Instead, they flowed through the enemy formation like a school of fish, each pilot's actions complementing the others in patterns too complex for conventional minds to follow. "Ghost lead to all fighters," Morrison transmitted, Remember, we're not trying to destroy every ship. We're trying to break their coordination. The fighters struck at command vessels, communication nodes, sensor arrays. Within minutes, the massive Zephyrian fleet began to lose cohesion. Their rigid command structure, so effective against conventional enemies, became a liability against an opponent that refused to follow established patterns. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of his flagship as the battle unfolded. The Crimson Fleet's cruisers and destroyers moved in constantly shifting formations, never presenting the same tactical picture twice. The Prometheus Eye learned from every exchange, adapting human strategy to counter Zephyrian responses. "Sir," called his tactical officer, "the enemy is trying to reform their battle line." "Then we don't let them," Chen replied. "All ships, implement Chaos Protocol 7. What happened next had never been attempted in the history of space warfare. The entire human fleet suddenly scattered, each ship following seemingly random vectors. To the Zephyrians, it looked like the human formation had simply collapsed. But there was method in the madness. The Prometheus Eye was coordinating 2,000 individual attack patterns, creating a battle that looked chaotic, but was actually precisely orchestrated. Human ships appeared from unexpected angles, struck hard at vulnerable targets, then disappeared before the enemy could respond. The Zephyrian commander, High Admiral Vexterin, watched the battle from his massive flagship with growing alarm. In 3 centuries of warfare, he had never seen tactics like this. The humans fought like no species he had ever encountered. "Communications," he barked. "Order all ships to withdraw to defensive formation Kefar." But the humans had anticipated even this. The moment the Zephyrians began to withdraw, the Crimson Fleet struck with coordinated precision. Ships that had seemed scattered suddenly converged on the alien withdrawal routes, turning an orderly retreat into a chaotic rout. Morrison's fighters harried the fleeing Zephyrian vessels like wolves pursuing scattered deer. His neural interface allowed him to process battle information at superhuman speed, coordinating with his wingmen through thought rather than words. "All wings, this is Ghost Lead. They're running, but don't let up. We end this here." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, the Zephyrian Third Fleet had been destroyed. Of nearly 4,000 alien vessels, fewer than 300 escaped. The humans had lost only 47 ships. High Admiral Vexterin's flagship was among the hulks drifting in Proxima's solar wind. His final transmission, broadcast on all frequencies, carried a warning that would spread throughout the galaxy. "To all Zephyrian forces," he gasped, his voice filled with disbelief and growing terror. "The humans, they don't fight like any species we know. They adapt, they learn, they change their tactics faster than we can respond. They're not just warriors. There's something new, something dangerous." Admiral Chen received the surrender of the remaining Zephyrian ships personally, but instead of accepting it, he opened a channel that broadcast throughout known space. "This is Admiral David Chen of the Earth Defense Force. To all alien species who might be listening, understand this. Humanity did not seek this war. We wanted only to live in peace among the stars. But you have chosen to make us your enemy." He paused, letting his words carry across light years of space. "We are not the same species that you first encountered decades ago. We have learned. We have adapted. We have grown strong. Any species that threatens human colonies, any empire that enslaves human beings, any force that seeks to exterminate our race will face the same fate as the Zephyrian Third Fleet." The transmission ended, but its message was clear. Humanity had evolved beyond the naive explorers who had first ventured into space. They had become something new, something that combined the best of biological creativity with artificial intelligence, individual heroism with collective coordination. The war with the Zephyrians continued for another year, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human fleets, guided by the ever-evolving Prometheus AI, and crewed by people who refused to accept defeat, systematically dismantled the alien empire. When it was over, humanity stood as a major power in the galaxy. The Crimson Fleet had become the prototype for a new kind of warfare, one that would influence military doctrine for generations to come. General Kane, now retired for the second and final time, stood once again before the holographic display in Cheyenne Mountain. But instead of showing battle plans, it now displayed the peaceful shipping lanes that connected hundreds of human worlds. Captain Morrison approached, his uniform now bearing the stars of an admiral. "Any regrets, General?" he asked. Kane considered the question carefully. The war had cost millions of lives, human and alien alike. It had changed humanity forever, turning them from peaceful explorers into something harder, more dangerous. "No," she said finally. "We didn't choose this war, but we chose how to fight it. We chose to survive. We chose to protect our own. And we chose to send a message to the galaxy that humanity is not prey." She turned to face him, her eyes still sharp despite her years. The Zephyrians thought they were hunting sheep. Instead, they woke up wolves. Let that be a lesson to anyone else who thinks humanity is weak. Outside, in the void between stars, the Crimson Fleet patrolled the borders of human space. They were no longer just ships and crews. They were the guardians of human civilization, the sword and shield of a species that had learned the hardest lesson of all. In a universe filled with threats, survival belonged to those who could adapt the fastest. And nobody adapted faster than humanity.